once there's a sense of feeling comfortable with communicating with yourself and other people around you, have been trying to provide support after you've left the direct and immediate violence from the previous accommodation you've been living in. Some quick fire steps follow, and they are associated with a whole range of different factors. One of the first factors that becomes apparent quite quickly is how devastatingly violence is impacted on children. And that's going to be demonstrated in a whole range of different ways. One of the first factors that little people are going to express is a sense of arguing and getting in you or my face as the party who's left about the other party, because again, little people are going to be feeling responsible for the fact that the separations occurred in the first place, and that this may be the first time that in getting away and getting out, that their experience has changed in a different way, and that is that mum and dad aren't making up again, or mum and mum or dad and dad aren't making up again, and something's changed. We're not back at home. We're not seeing any sense of conciliatory or make-up ritual, whatever that, from their little perspective, happened to be and what they saw in terms of that being acted out. And with that, there's a sense of confusion in as much as this time is the last time, and some different factors occurring. There are professional faces who are new, who little people may not have seen before, haven't met these people. There are new routines, particularly where you're in a shelter, or you're in a safe house, or you're in a family member's house, so there are new routines. However, foremost is a sense that something's different about this morning. Our parents, plural, are not both here. What is going on? And so there's going to be tears, and there's going to be anger, and there's going to be some questions from older children who do have an idea of what is being done here and what's going on, who do have an idea that this is different this time. We've moved away and the other party isn't here with us, who are listening to some of the conversations and getting the indication pretty quickly that this time is new and it's different, because not only are things being done differently, but there are statements being made and intimated that there's a finality this time. And so for little people, there's of course sadness, there's guilt. There's guilt because where they've been caught up in the middle of years and years of altercations and years of arguments, they've failed their mission because they haven't helped parents stay together. And so with that, there's also anger which surfaces, and it's tragic in as much as little people don't comprehend that you as the adult partner who has moved out were rendered powerless by your previous partner's violence towards you. And little people don't have a comprehension of that. They don't realise that even while they're looking to you as the other adult in the house to protect them, that you've in fact been rendered powerless. And not only cannot protect yourself, can't protect them either. And so that's a very confusing feature for them, because you're the go-to person in terms of access and proximity, who they're going to go and ask all the questions of, and who probably too, particularly from a gender modelling sense, they're going to hold accountable, because the poor other parent, who they're going to perceive very much as having betrayed, is not here to answer those questions. And that's a confusing spot to be in, because on one hand, you might be fighting all those thoughts and feelings about, they really did love me and they weren't so bad after all, and what about the time when, and it wasn't all bad, and there were tender moments there. Those sort of self-generated self-talk, those scripts going on that are all too familiar from the past because they've prompted you to stay where you were in the first place. And so those are all being indulged in. Within that is being engendered in the self-evaluatory sense, a journey of self-persecution, a journey of doubt, because this may be the first time that you've taken this bigger step in physically leaving the premises and taking what you needed, basic necessities at least, to individuate yourself from the relationship and get out. And so not only is it scary for you, but you're starting to see some of the other impacts that were suppressed and hidden in your children that you didn't know were there. And some of them are going to be really hard to cop to, really hard to accept, because ostensibly, or at face value, what they're doing is they're holding you accountable for the whole deal, for the other partner's actions, for the impact those actions have had. Because again, you're the parent who is accessible. You're the parent who they do acknowledge as their other caregiver. And as such, they want accountability from you. They want protection from you. They want a sense of assurance from you. They want to be able to express how they're feeling to you. And in a very confused way, some of the older siblings, particularly males, where you've got a male partner in particular who you may have left, are going to have identified with a lot of the behaviours that they've had modelled to them. And so some of their questions may be quite accusatory, some of them might be quite bullying in nature, some of them might be quite threatening in nature. And this period of time is going to get really, really challenging. There's no two ways to dress it up or make it sound good or anything else. The reality is it's an extremely challenging time because you're going to see acted out towards you and around you a whole range of all the familiar features that were being contained in the domestic violence within your household. Except now they're being acted out in front of your relatives or in front of professionals at the safe house or refuge or both. And there's going to be a new realisation of, wow, why are our children speaking this way to me? Why are they saying these things? Why are they taking sides? Why are they making statements that are really hurting my feelings when I've tried to do my best to look after and protect them? And over time, what's going to occur in the wee quiet moments is that you're going to find out a whole lot of other details around your children's experiences that were going on in the house that you may not have been aware of previously, because you were punched out, you were unconscious, you were preoccupied trying to read the environment, you were busy just trying to get by in terms of cooking and cleaning, doing the things that by default you've ended up doing by yourself. And as a result of that, there's going to be some new things, new factors appearing on the horizon that you may not have known at all were there. And this can be a really difficult time, devastating time. Children's pictures, children's narratives, talk amongst themselves, talk to other children at a shelter or refuge or at relations places, pictures they innocently draw at the table, conversations they have that you overhear from the dining room to the lounge, and a sense of, wow, are those our children saying those things? Are these things real? So some real shock factor issues. And sometimes a real sense of despair around that, because in the face of this confusing moment of jubilation, we've managed to make the decision to get out. Suddenly, the tin has come off, the cap has come off the bucket of worms, and everything is spilling out. And so it can be a really, really shocking, overwhelming time. One, in terms of your own responses to having escaped. And secondly, in relation to all these layers and dimensions of new information that you may not previously have had any awareness of. And so it's really important during this time to do the best you can to listen, to do the best you can not to have to provide magical answers on the spot. What's important is to acknowledge what's being said and hear the speaker out. whether the speaker be 3, 4, 10, 13, 16, just hear them out. Because not unlike yourself, they too have experienced fear. They too have experienced mental or psychological abuse at being sworn at being put down, at being punished for things they haven't done, at being bullied, at having personal and social opportunities cut short by a person who's acted like a bear with a sore head and been vitriolic and quite nasty. Other times outrightly bullying and intimidating. And so whilst you're going through yourself a process of shock and confusion and coming out of that environment, your children are too. And they're looking to yourself to provide guidance and direction around this new magical world outside of that domestic violence environment. And so it's a hard time. It's a really hard time. With it too, of course, particularly where the children are changing schools, is getting feedback from other systems that your children are engaged in that their behaviour is concerning, that they're crying a lot, that they're isolating in the school ground and not making new friends, that some of them may bully other children and are acting out what it is that they've learned to do and witnessed at home. And so all this array of varying factors that need to be managed carefully and worked through. And so, again, that support dimension becomes very, very crucial at this time. The other factor, of course, that becomes very crucial is making sure, particularly for teenagers, that they're safe, that they're not going to go act out and do anything silly, both in terms of high-risk social activities, in terms of self-harm too. They're not going to take risks which are going to lend them to having accidents or breaking things, including parts of themselves. And that can go from doing silly things on their bike outside to getting into a headspace of, I don't give a stuff anymore. So placing themselves at risk in that way. So support around the ratios issue that was previously mentioned becomes really, really important, so that there's a doorway, there's an open doorway for communication, and a sense that your little people have got the message that no matter how big, small, scary, or ugly their dialogue is, that you're there for them and that you're okay to hear what they have to say without them being shut down or chided, or a sense of, I've just had enough, don't you kids appreciate me? So you're going to have to dig deep, bottom line. You're going to have to dig really deep. Because you're going to get in a number of weeks and months what's been suppressed within them for potentially years. And it's going to be the first opportunity for them too to be able to express these things to you and acknowledge them in a way where they aren't being shut down for doing so, where they no longer have to pretend around what the usual or realistic factors were for them, and in a way where they're going to identify you as their parent in a different way for the first time in a long time, for some of them, for the first time at all. And so that's really, really challenging territory, because you get to witness the full extent of the hurt in your domestic situation vicariously or through your children. And so that whole sense of the previous belief operating of, we stay together for the children, is suddenly going to hit a very shattering brick wall. And there's going to be a wake-up shock time. And with that shock time and the realisation of how insidious these domestic violence impacts have been, an opportunity for you to do a number of things. And the opportunity is going to be to get really down and feel very, very guilty and bad about the decisions that you made, or for that matter, the level of powerlessness you had and the inability to make decisions. You're going to feel very, very angry yourself in realising the various myriad of ways in which the control of your life was being exerted over you and how that was being done. And you're going to learn very, very specifically through your children's dialogue and expression, not only what they have experienced, however, what they've witnessed you experiencing. And this can be a really sad time, because your children may have experienced seeing you getting kicked in the head while you were unconscious on the ground. Your children may have experienced witnessing you being raped. Your children may have experienced you crying on the phone to a family member when you thought they weren't there. Your child may have experienced a sense of life is over for us and not being able to protect you. So there's a whole range of forms of violence and violation their children may have witnessed directly that you didn't know that they've witnessed. And so these features are going to come bubbling to the surface. These vulnerabilities are going to come presenting themselves. And with it, the need to ensure that there's appropriate support around all of you to start sharing these things, to start putting them out there, to start expressing and getting them out of their little systems, and also too to start consolidating a sense of being a new group. Because whilst there is a key member or members missing from the group, there's that unlevel playing field situation of little people not marrying up. I love the person who hurt me and was hurt by the person I love. And so yes, the direct, immediate dangerousness and the physical violence and the psychological abuse and all the other forms of manipulation may have stopped for the time being. However, what hasn't stopped is little people's desire and goal of trying to influence that only factor they have influence over, and that's trying to do good things because they want the world to be a better place, their little world. And where they're only 3 feet high, they'll do good things because they're innocent. They'll do good things. They'll act loving and caring amongst the most devastating environments because that pure love they have, despite being tainted or despite being shut down or despite being hugely affected within that environment, in terms of who they are, they're going around trying to change the world and make it a better place in their own little way. And so the confusing thing is that whilst there's a sense of relief from being away, they still love the other party who's been left behind. And this, again, in terms of firsts, may be the first time as a group that you've been together in a group in this way, by yourselves, away from harm, not having the anxiety and the stress points of having to anticipate when the big bad wolf comes home, and a sense of having not experienced that for a long, long time, to the point of having some siblings who are relative strangers to each other, because part of the impact of the violence is some of the older siblings have been able to get out of the house. They've been able to go and join sports teams. They've been able to go and stay at friends' places. They've been able to couch surf. They've had the autonomy and the capacity to distance themselves from the discomfort in various ways that smaller children, because they're more dependent, do not have. And so here's the sense of a disparate group. And whilst you recognise each other and you know your family and you know you care about each other and love each other, there's a huge confusion there, because the impact of throwing a frag in the middle of 6 compartmentalised steel rooms as it affects people who get hit by it in different ways. And people can be in their own bedrooms in a house. Children and adults can be in their own respective bedrooms in a house and know that violence is being done and know that's having an impact. What they don't necessarily have is the language and the opportunity to share the nature of what the impacts are and have been. And so this involvement at this stage is going to provide an opportunity to do just that. And so that's what makes it such a challenging time. We get to listen to John, or we get to listen to Brooke, or we get to listen to Kirsten, or we get to listen to Ariana or whomever in the house telling their story. and telling it in a way that involves and includes the remainder of us. Mum, do you remember when? John, do you remember when? And so what they're trying to do is not only share, but they're also trying to get a sense of validating that experience, not because they don't believe it occurred for themselves, but because they ardently seek a witness in as much as being able to support some of the very lonely, some of the very horror-stricken, some of the very shaming experiences that they've had throughout the process of trying to survive what's being done to them or around them, or both, in the house. And so as this time progresses, there's going to be a reshuffling of the deck, boundaries are going to be tested, a sense of family roles that have been developed that have displaced who people are in the house for what they do, maybe quite impersonally. And that's going to be a challenge because Ariana has gone out and made a cup of tea and gotten biscuits as soon as people come in. She doesn't talk to anybody. She doesn't make contact. She doesn't want uncontrolled attention directed towards her. She doesn't want to be asked questions. She's used to being the quiet person who gets about their business, but who's very, very withdrawn and shy. And so each of the people in the house are going to be presented with the challenge of telling their story, of sharing what they've seen and witnessed, sharing what they've experienced, and also not only confirming factors that they've experienced and witnessed, but also too seeking a sense of support around them from the point of view of, did these things really happen? Were they really done? Some of them seem like a bad dream. And so that's the challenging period in terms of communication. Setting up conducive events, whether they be eating tea together, whether they be going out for a walk together, whether they be going out to the local beach, whether they be going out on a picnic, whether they be going out to the local community hall or wherever it happens to be in terms of where you are. This is a time where you're together, all at the same time. And there's no violence to get in the way, and there's no fear being topped up in the environment, and there's also a very stark realisation that's presenting, and it's a sense of we don't communicate openly as a whole family system because the violence has formed the parameters and the context within which we communicate or don't communicate to and with each other. And that realisation is absolutely tragic. However, it's also a realisation that once acknowledged, identified and owned is a turning point, because it means that in terms of personal agency or taking some ownership for what's been done and what the impacts are, once that's been owned, you and I can then start to work together to do something around changing and addressing those factors, both as a collective, as a group, and we're required for individuals in the group. And as I said previously, older siblings have managed to get out of the house. Younger ones may have not. Equally, for those older siblings who've gotten out of the house, you or I may not know what they've gotten up to when they've done that. Have they developed a habit? Have they been out sniffing solvents? Have they been out drinking alcohol? Have they been out on the end of a deck? Have they been out on the end of a bowl? Have they been out doing whatever? And so some of those factors have got to be taken into account too. Now, without blowing things out of all proportion or painting the worst possible picture, the issues here are really the factor that there's been a whole range of experiences across developmental stages for our children that you and I may not know about. And it's not out of an environment of deviance where secrecy has been promoted. It's more out of an environment of hostility and discomfort and non-cohesion, where relationships haven't gelled because they've been undermined by fear, they've been undermined by shame, they've been undermined through intimidation and control. And so they've become disjointed, they've become fragmented, and as a result, family members have become isolated from each other. And so what this stage of recovering respect and dignity and a sense of direction for the family really presents is being able to metaphorically put a stake in the ground. I'm talking about, in some countries, they call it a waratah, like a fencing pole, and putting that stake in the ground that you'd otherwise affix wire to, and putting it in front of you as a means of something to head towards, as a means of direction, as a means of establishing some new goals, to bring some boundaries and to bring some clarity and to bring some direction out of an environment that's been chaotic and undermining. And so this sets the parameters for the next step in the journey. And with it, some really large challenges, because the contract that you or I establish as parents, as adults, in the household, new household structure for our children, is going to determine how they recover from what it is that they've experienced. And it's also going to arrest some of the negative features that they've witnessed and have impacted on them. So it's really, really important that we have our wits about us at this point in time, because we've got to dig deep. We've got to put, again, some of our own issues on hold for a while, despite the fact that all the best meaning helpers in the world have tried to triage us and identify what all our needs are with us and for us, etc. We've actually got to put the handbrake on for a bit and say, hold on, we need to develop some sense of routine and safety for our little ones around direction, around any immediate features of harm or factors of harm, both from outside means and from within the household too. And so that becomes the next challenge. Putting the stake in the ground, providing direction, giving guidance around that direction, and settling family members into a new holding pattern, one that's non-violent, one that encourages open dialogue, open talking, one that encourages honesty, not because you've been dishonest, but because the opportunity to express openly simply hasn't been available because it's been shut down through fear, intimidation, etc. And of course, also a sense of safety, so that children know that they can express and say whatever they need to express and say, and that it's okay for them to do that. So in terms of toolkits along the way, the main factor is one of creating a doorway through which legal people can get access to your right and express what's going on for them. Just by way of an exercise, it's really helpful to help our little people make a mailbox. And I'm talking about one about the size of a shoebox. It's created from cardboard and paper, and it can have little bits of white paper glued or sellotape to it, and they can draw pictures on it and decorate it, and then put pictures in it where they aren't able to read or write, put pictures in. And pictures are a means to communicate symbolically with the party who's been left behind. And they may be, this is what we did today. And part of the encouragement towards and of our little people to do that is so that they can get what they need to get out of their little systems. So they can draw pictures to mum who's been left behind. They can draw pictures to dad who's been left behind. And they can, in essence, be helped to prevent splitting internally and having to divide themselves between two big warring parties who they've had no influence over. And so what that can symbolically do, that exercise, is have a sense that I can still share my love with mum and or dad, can still do that. I can still share the concerns I have for their needs, and I can still share a sense of knowing that they know I still love them and that they're okay. It's really, really important for little people. The objective of doing that exercise is at some point when there's contact made with the other party, who for whatever reason has been left behind, that a mailbox can be gifted to them too. And where they find the time and have the inclination and motivation, they can draw little pictures in return, or they can send little notes in return. And that way, the letterbox not only keeps you up to check with what's going on for your little people in the house, it also forms a way in which they can maintain some form of contact with the other party, so that when safety is restored, there's a sense of little people knowing that amongst all the confusion and the hurt, that they haven't been abandoned, that there's an ongoing relationship being maintained, and that they're being the same little loving, innocent person they were today as they were yesterday through their mailbox, because they're able to express their love, their gratitude, their concern, to make sure that mum or dad or whomever the other parental party is being tucked in at 7 o'clock at night, is getting read a bedtime story, is okay and warm and all those other things. So that's one exercise that can be useful in conveying and helping to underwrite that ongoing need for them. And in doing so, maintain a sense of them being a whole little person as best possible, but also a sense of not undermining or splitting the development of their little identity any further than it already may have been.